Welcome to Starbound Valor HFY. Subscribe now and dive into daily epic sci-fi adventures, where humanity always rises. Ilara's boots sank slightly into the red dust of the barren planet as she checked her scanner one more time. The small human outpost was completely destroyed. Smoke curled into the pale green sky, and the air smelled of burning metal. She had been sent on a routine survey mission, but nothing had prepared her for this. Her comms were dead, and the silence was suffocating. Every shadow seemed to move on its own. She could hear the faint hum of her life support system and the quick rhythm of her own heartbeat. Her fingers shook as she opened her emergency transmitter, the one device that could call for help. She had to try. She keyed in the coordinates and sent out the distress signal, her voice trembling as she repeated the words into the mic. "This is Scout Ilara. Mayday, Mayday. I am trapped on Death World 9. Need immediate extraction. Repeat, immediate extraction required." The signal crackled through the empty skies, carrying her voice to the distant reaches of space. She didn't know if anyone would hear it, but it was her only chance. Then she froze. The scanner beeped with a strange reading she had never seen before. A fleet of unknown ships was approaching fast. Their shape was alien, sleek, and menacing, moving in perfect formation. Fear gripped her chest, but curiosity pushed her forward. She activated her small drone to scout ahead. The drone lifted off quietly, its sensors scanning the area. On its feed, she saw the fleet moving like a storm across the horizon. They were huge, dark ships, each one bristling with weapons that gleamed even in the dim light. Ilara swallowed hard. She remembered the stories she had heard as a child about the Death World fleet. They were unstoppable. They punished anyone who dared enter their domain. Their reputation alone had terrified entire star systems. Her pulse quickened. She was alone, and now she had attracted their attention. But she was human, and humans were clever. She scanned the terrain around her, her mind racing for a plan. There were jagged cliffs nearby, and the rocky terrain could give her some cover. She needed to stay hidden and stay alive until rescue arrived. With a deep breath, she began to move, keeping low and silent. Her boots crunched softly against the gravel, and every step felt heavier than the last. Above her, the sky darkened as the alien ships moved closer. She could feel the ground tremble with their approach. Her hands gripped her sidearm, though she knew it would do little against such overwhelming force. Survival meant brains, not firepower. She remembered the training drills back on Earth, how humans could use the environment to their advantage, how one small action could create a diversion, how clever thinking could make even the strongest enemy pause. She spotted a narrow canyon ahead and decided it would be her first trap. She climbed to a higher ledge and gathered some loose rocks and metal debris. Carefully, she set a series of triggers, small alarms that would make noise and lights if the aliens passed through certain points. She hoped it would confuse them, make them think the humans were more numerous than they were. As she worked, her drone beeped urgently. On its screen, she saw a squad of alien scouts separating from the main fleet. They were moving toward her position. She held her breath, crouching low, pressing herself against the rough stone. Her heart hammered in her chest as she waited. The first alien appeared, its shape strange, limbs moving in ways that seemed unnatural. Its eyes, or what she thought were eyes, glowed faintly. It paused, sniffing the air, then moved forward. She triggered her first trap, and a loud clang echoed through the canyon. The alien jerked, startled, scanning the area. Another clang, another flash of light. The scout hissed something in its alien tongue, and then it moved cautiously, slower than before. She allowed herself a small, silent sigh of relief. This was her chance. She had to keep moving. The main fleet was coming, and soon they would sweep the entire area. Every second counted. She remembered the emergency kit she carried on her back, pulling out a compact survival pack with rations, a small medkit, and a portable energy blade. She slung it over her shoulder and began to climb higher into the canyon, hoping the rocky walls would hide her from the alien sensors. As she climbed, she glanced at the sky. The fleet was closer now, enormous ships blotting out the light. She felt a chill run down her spine. The stories hadn't done them justice. Their presence was overwhelming. She forced herself to focus. She was human, Humans adapted. Humans survived. Her mind raced with ideas, each more desperate than the last. She considered leading the aliens into a trap, using the narrow canyon to bottleneck them. She considered setting the emergency signal to self-destruct in bursts to confuse their sensors. She considered just running and hiding, hoping the aliens would overlook her. Then she paused. She realized something. The aliens hesitated near her signal. Something about it made them cautious. She had unknowingly used one of the oldest tricks in human history, drawing attention to create fear. She smiled faintly, even in the terror. Maybe she had a chance after all. But there was no time to celebrate. The hum of the fleet grew louder. Shadows moved across the red rock, like living darkness. She took a deep breath, gripping her blade and her sidearm, and prepared for the next step. She would have to be smarter, faster, and braver than she had ever been. One wrong move, and she would die. One right move, and she might survive long enough to warn the rest of humanity. The first scouts were almost upon her. She tightened her grip and whispered to herself, "Come on, humans. Don't fail now." And then the canyon was alive with the echoing sounds of alien movement, the clangs of her traps, and the pounding of her heart as the real test of survival began. Ilara pressed herself against the rocky wall of the canyon, her eyes scanning the approaching alien scouts. Her breathing was steady, but her mind raced with possibilities. The Death World fleet was closer than ever, their massive ships casting dark shadows over the planet's surface. The scouts moved carefully, their strange movements almost like a dance, each step precise and calculated. She could hear the faint hum of their energy weapons charging, a sound that made the hair on her arms rise. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to think. Humans had survived worse, she reminded herself, and clever thinking was their strongest weapon. She pulled out her small drone and sent it hovering above, using it to map the scouts' positions. On the screen, she saw how methodical they were, yet there was something odd in their behavior. They hesitated near the canyon walls, as if sensing a presence they could not see. That gave her hope. She quietly reached into her pack and pulled out a compact EMP device she had scavenged from a crashed ship earlier. If she timed it right, she could disable a scout long enough to create a diversion. She waited, watching as one of the alien scouts moved closer to her trap. Her fingers shook slightly, but she pressed the button. A small pulse of energy erupted, and the scout froze mid-step, sparks flying from its body. It twitched violently, then collapsed motionless. The other scouts paused, their glowing eyes scanning the area. Ilara took a deep breath and used a moment to climb higher into the canyon. She needed a vantage point to see the bigger picture. From above, she could see the main fleet moving in a triangular formation, each ship perfectly aligned with the next. The sheer size of them made her stomach turn. This was no ordinary threat. This was a force that could crush entire colonies without hesitation. Yet she refused to let fear take over. Humans were adaptable, and she would prove it. She surveyed the landscape, spotting a series of jagged rocks that could serve as cover and a choke point. She made her way carefully, setting up small obstacles and traps, hoping to slow down the alien advance. As she worked, her drone beeped urgently. On its feed, she saw another group of scouts separating from the main fleet, heading directly toward her. She froze, weighing her options. Fighting them head-on was impossible. She needed a plan, and fast. She remembered a lesson from her training. Sometimes, humans survive not because they are stronger, but because they are unpredictable. An idea sparked in her mind. She quickly arranged debris and rocks in a pattern, creating the illusion of more humans hiding in the canyon. Then she triggered one of the traps remotely, sending a loud clang echoing through the rocks. The alien scouts stopped abruptly, exchanging strange noises in their alien language. They scanned the canyon cautiously, moving slower than before. Ilara smiled faintly. Her plan was working, but there was no time to celebrate. The main fleet was descending rapidly, and she could see smaller dropships separating from the larger ships, preparing to land. Panic threatened to rise in her chest, but she shoved it down. She needed to focus. Using her drone's feed, she observed that the aliens were scanning systematically, but their sensors seemed less effective against the rocky terrain and debris she had set up. Humans could use creativity in ways aliens could not predict. She decided to take a risk. She activated a small flare on the opposite side of the canyon, hoping to draw some scouts away. Sparks flew, and a bright light lit the rocks. Several scouts diverted toward the flare, leaving a small gap. Elara seized the moment and sprinted to a safer position, using the canyon walls for cover. She could feel the ground tremble as the dropships touched down, sending clouds of dust into the air. She ducked behind a boulder, peering over the edge. Alien soldiers were emerging, moving in squads, their weapons scanning for life. Her stomach twisted. One wrong move, and she would be discovered and killed instantly. She whispered to herself, "Think, Elara. Humans survive by thinking." She noticed a weak point in their formation, a narrow passage between rocks where only one alien could pass at a time. If she could lure them there, she might be able to slow their advance even further. She grabbed a small rock and threw it toward the passage. It bounced loudly, and one alien turned, curious. She pressed another button on her drone, creating a subtle noise behind the alien. The scout moved cautiously into the narrow passage, and she triggered another trap, a small burst of energy that sent the scout tumbling. The others hesitated, confused by the sudden disappearance of their companion. Elara's heart raced, but she allowed herself a brief smile. Her human ingenuity was giving her a fighting chance. Yet she knew this was only the beginning. The Death World fleet was relentless, and this planet was just one of many they had conquered. She needed to survive, learn their weaknesses, and warn others. She moved quickly, climbing higher for a better vantage point. From there, she could see the entire valley, the alien dropships landing more troops, and the main fleet hovering ominously above. Her mind raced with plans. She had to get information, live long enough to send it back, and maybe, just maybe, turn the tide. As she watched, one of the alien commanders stepped forward, larger and more imposing than the others. Its glowing eyes scanned the canyon, and it hissed a sound that made Elara shiver. It was intelligent, aware, and dangerous. She realized that brute force alone would never defeat these creatures. Humans had to be clever, unpredictable, and resourceful. Her pulse quickened, but she steeled herself. This was what it meant to be human. She had survived before through wit and courage, and she would survive again. The scouts moved closer to her traps, their glowing eyes scanning, and she knew the real test was about to begin. Every decision could mean life or death. Elara gripped her sidearm and whispered, "Let's see if humans can outthink them." The alien commander paused, sensing something, and a low hum echoed through the valley as the fleet's ships prepared to deploy more forces. The tension was unbearable. She crouched behind her boulder, ready for the first real confrontation. And then, the first alien dropped into the canyon, stepping right into the trap she had prepared, and the battle of wits and survival between humans and the unstoppable Death World fleet began in earnest. Elara crouched behind a jagged boulder, her chest rising and falling rapidly as she watched the alien scouts stumble through her traps. Dust hung thick in the canyon, stirred by the landing dropships above, and the air was filled with a low hum of alien engines. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for her comm device, hoping it still had enough power to send a warning signal to nearby human colonies. She tapped into the portable transmitter, running a quick diagnostic. It was old and scratched, a relic of past expeditions, but it still worked. Her message had to reach someone, anyone, before the Death World fleet could sweep across the planet and destroy everything. She keyed in the coordinates, her voice firm despite the fear tightening her throat. "This is Scout Elara. The Death World fleet has arrived. Immediate evacuation is required. All nearby colonies, prepare defenses. I repeat, immediate evacuation is required." The signal beeped and sent her warning into the void of space, but she knew it would take time for anyone to respond. She had to survive long enough to see help arrive. Her eyes flicked back to the canyon, where alien scouts were regrouping after being caught in her traps. She could see the confusion on their movements, their glowing eyes scanning for life, and she knew that humans were unpredictable in ways they could not calculate. That gave her a small hope. Elara pulled a small map from her pack and spread it on a flat rock, tracing possible routes with her finger. She needed an evacuation plan. The canyon provided some cover, but the alien scouts would soon clear it. She needed to reach higher ground, where she could signal faster and move more freely. She also needed to find any survivors who might still be hiding. As she studied the map, a faint sound caught her attention, a whisper of movement coming from deeper within the canyon. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be another human? She crept closer, careful to remain unseen, and saw a figure huddled behind a rock. It was a young engineer, one of the colony workers she had been sent to check on. Relief flooded her chest. "I'm here," she whispered, motioning the survivor toward her. "We have to move." "Now." The engineer nodded, fear written across his face, but he followed silently. Alara quickly explained the situation, pointing out the alien scouts and the main fleet hovering above. She laid out the plan. They would move through the narrow passages she had prepared with traps, climb to the upper cliffs, and then reach a ridge where her signal could be amplified. From there, they could hopefully guide incoming human forces to their location and escape the planet. They moved cautiously, staying low behind rocks and debris. The alien scouts were alert, and every movement carried the risk of being seen. Alara's mind raced, calculating timing, angles, and distractions. When a scout stepped too close, she triggered a small noise trap, sending a burst of light and sound to the opposite side. The alien paused, scanning the canyon, and she led the engineer past it silently. The higher they climbed, the more of the alien fleet she could see. Dropships were moving in patterns, releasing more soldiers, while the main ships hovered like dark predators above. Her stomach churned at the sight, but she refused to let panic take over. Humans survived because they adapted, she reminded herself. She reached a small ledge with the engineer, where they could rest briefly. The canyon below was a chaotic maze of traps, smoke, and alien confusion. Alara took out a small device from her pack, a portable energy beacon, and calibrated it to amplify her distress signal. She needed every second to count. She activated the beacon, sending a powerful pulse into space, hoping it would reach human command faster. Suddenly, the drone she had sent earlier beeped urgently. On its screen, she saw a group of alien soldiers moving in their direction, faster and more alert than before. Her heart raced. They had to move quickly or risk being trapped. She grabbed the engineer's arm and sprinted across the ledge, leaping over jagged rocks and sliding down a slope to another canyon path. Dust and debris rained around them as they ran, the alien's footsteps echoing dangerously close. She triggered another trap remotely, sending a loud metallic clang into the canyon. One alien paused, confused, giving them just enough time to reach a safer position. Alara's mind worked at 100 miles per hour, calculating their next moves. They reached a narrow passage that led to the upper cliffs. The climb was steep and dangerous, but it offered the best chance of escape. Using every ounce of strength, they scaled the rocks, pulling each other up when necessary. When they reached the top, the view was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The Death World fleet stretched across the horizon, their massive ships blotting out the sky, dropships swarming the planet like insects. Below, the canyon was filled with chaos, alien soldiers moving in confusion, caught in her traps and diversions. She activated the beacon fully now, sending a strong, pulsing signal into orbit, hoping that human reinforcements would detect it. Her hand shook with exhaustion, but she knew she had done everything she could for now. They had to wait and hope that help was on the way. As she scanned the horizon, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. A massive alien commander had stepped out of a dropship, larger and more imposing than the others. Its glowing eyes scanned the terrain, moving slowly, deliberately, as if searching for her specifically. Alara pressed herself against the rock, heart pounding. She whispered to the engineer, "Stay quiet. Humans survive because we are clever, not because we are strong." They crouched behind a ridge, watching as the alien commander moved with precise steps toward the canyon, its soldiers following. Alara's mind raced for ideas, any trick that could slow them down. She realized that their best chance was to remain hidden until the signal was received. Every trap, every noise, every distraction had bought them time, but the fleet was relentless. She activated a small mirror device, reflecting light into the commander's eyes. The alien paused, recoiling slightly, giving them precious seconds to hide further. Time was their only ally now. She glanced at the horizon, where faint stars were visible, and whispered a silent promise. Humans were clever, humans survived, and humans never gave up. The Death World fleet might be unstoppable, but they had underestimated human ingenuity. Ilara tightened her grip on her sidearm, her eyes scanning the horizon for any movement, her mind planning the next step in their escape. Below, the canyon was a mess of confusion and fire, but above, humans were still alive. She had survived so far, and she would survive the next challenge too. The alien commander's gaze swept over the canyon once more, and Ilara knew this was only the beginning. Their fight was just starting, but she had a plan, and humans always found a way. She took a deep breath, whispering to herself, "We are human. We will not fail." The canyon remained tense and quiet for a moment, but the hum of alien engines above reminded her that danger was never far. She glanced at the engineer, nodded, and began preparing the next stage of their daring escape, knowing that every second counted. Ilara crouched on the ridge, her eyes fixed on the horizon as the massive shadow of the Death World fleet descended upon the planet. The hum of their engines grew louder, shaking the rocks beneath her hands. Dust and debris swirled around the cliffs as the first dropships began to land near the canyon below. The alien soldiers poured out with precision, their glowing eyes scanning every corner, every shadow, every hiding place. Ilara gripped her sidearm tighter, but she knew that shooting them was pointless. They were too many, too strong, and far too advanced. Survival meant brains, not bullets. She glanced at the young engineer beside her, whose face was pale with fear, and whispered, "Stay low. Watch and learn. Humans survive by being clever, not by being stronger." Below, the canyon became chaos. Her traps and diversions had slowed the alien scouts, but now the main troops were everywhere, moving in perfect formation. Dropships continued to descend from the fleet above, each one larger than anything she had ever seen. The ground trembled under the weight of the massive ships. Her pulse quickened, but she forced herself to focus. Humans could turn even the smallest advantage into survival, and she would prove it here. She scanned the canyon and noticed a series of narrow passes between jagged rocks. If she could lure the aliens into these natural choke points, they could slow the advance long enough for any human rescue to arrive. She took a deep breath and began to move, signaling the engineer to follow quietly. Every step was calculated, every movement deliberate. As they crept through the canyon, alien soldiers passed just feet away, their glowing eyes searching for any sign of life. Ilara stayed silent, her heart hammering in her chest, relying on every trick she had learned in training. The engineer stumbled once, and she grabbed his arm, pulling him into the shadow of a boulder. They held their breath as the alien passed, unaware of the humans hidden in plain sight. She pressed on, using the natural terrain to her advantage, creating small diversions along the way. Rocks tumbled down cliffs, shadows shifted, and faint noises echoed, confusing the alien troops. She could hear them hiss and murmur in their strange tongue, but they did not understand human cunning. Her mind raced, planning each step, each trap, each trick. Then she saw it. The massive alien commander she had noticed earlier, now moving through the canyon with several of its soldiers. Its glowing eyes scanned the rocks, and its movements were deliberate, intelligent. It was no ordinary opponent. It was aware, and it was searching for her specifically. Ilara pressed herself against the canyon wall, whispering, "We survive because we think. Humans survive because we adapt." She triggered a small trap, sending a burst of light and sound to the far side of the canyon. The commander paused, confused, while the rest of its troops hesitated. That was all the time she needed. She led the engineer into a narrow passage that twisted and turned, the perfect bottleneck. Here, one alien could pass at a time. She placed small debris and rocks strategically, ready to trigger more traps if necessary. The first alien soldier moved into the passage and tumbled into one of her traps, emitting a loud screech. Its companions hesitated, scanning for life, giving her precious seconds to move further along the rocks. Ilara's heart raced, but she smiled faintly. Even against an unstoppable force, humans could be clever. The main fleet hovered above, their massive forms blotting out the sun, but she refused to despair. She remembered the old Earth saying, "Where there's a will, there's a way." Humans had survived countless battles against impossible odds, and she would continue that legacy. As she moved higher into the canyon cliffs, she noticed a group of alien soldiers moving toward a smaller human settlement she had seen from the ridge. Her pulse quickened. Innocent lives were at risk, but she had to keep moving. She needed a vantage point where she could observe the fleet and send information back. She spotted a jagged cliff edge that overlooked both the canyon and the approaching ships. If she reached it, she could plan her next move and maybe, just maybe, guide any rescue forces to strike the aliens' weak points. The climb was treacherous, but she had no choice. She hauled herself up, pulling the engineer behind her. Rocks crumbled under their weight, and dust filled the air, but they pressed on. At last, they reached the cliff edge. The view was terrifying. The Death World fleet stretched across the sky, dropships swarming the canyon below, and alien soldiers moving with deadly precision. The ground seemed to tremble under their sheer presence. Ilara steadied herself and pulled out her portable signal device. She had to warn others, to buy time for any humans in the area. She activated it, sending a strong pulse into space, hoping it would reach human command. As the device hummed, she watched the canyon below. Her traps had slowed some of the aliens, but the main force was overwhelming. She knew that unless reinforcements came soon, the settlement and anyone hiding would be lost. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed from the fleet above. One of the massive dropships had landed too close to a rocky outcrop, its energy weapons firing indiscriminately. The canyon below erupted in chaos. Aliens shouted, humans screamed, and dust filled the air. Ilara's stomach twisted, but she gritted her teeth. This was not the time to panic. She had to survive, plan, and act. Humans had always found a way, and she would be no exception. She turned to the engineer and said, "We move now. Follow me. Every second counts." They sprinted across the cliff edge, jumping over gaps, sliding down slopes, and using the terrain to hide from alien sensors. Behind them, the canyon became a battlefield, the Death World fleet's unstoppable punishment raining down. Yet, Ilara felt a spark of hope. The human spirit was strong, resilient, and clever. Even here, facing impossible odds, they could survive. As they reached a safer plateau, she paused, catching her breath, and surveyed the battlefield below. She saw the alien commander, its glowing eyes scanning, its troops moving with deadly coordination. She clenched her fists. It would not be easy, but humans were never meant to give up. This was the beginning of their resistance, the first step in proving that even against the unstoppable Death World fleet, human ingenuity and courage could make a difference. Ilara looked at the horizon, where faint stars were visible, and whispered, "We survive. Humans survive." And with that, she began planning her next move, knowing that the real fight had just begun, and the Death World fleet would not stop until they thought they had destroyed everything. Ilara crouched behind a jagged boulder on the plateau, her eyes scanning the canyon below, where the Death World fleet had begun their relentless sweep. Dust swirled in the air, and smoke rose from the destroyed outposts, the ground shaking from the heavy dropships above. Her portable signal device hummed faintly, still sending pulses of warning into space, but she knew it would take time before anyone responded. The young engineer beside her shivered, fear evident in every movement, but she placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. "Humans survive because we think," she whispered, "not because we are stronger. Watch, learn, and act." They could not fight the aliens head-on. The fleet was too powerful, too coordinated. But humans were unpredictable, clever, and relentless. Ilara scanned the terrain, looking for survivors. In the distance, she spotted a small group of humans huddled behind the remains of a fallen structure, frightened and confused. Relief mixed with urgency as she motioned to them. They needed leadership, direction, and a plan. She called to them softly, instructing them to move toward the cover of nearby cliffs, where they could remain hidden and safer from alien sensors. Her mind raced, calculating every step, every possible trap, every diversion. She knew the canyon below was now a battlefield, but the cliffs above offered strategic advantage. Using small rocks and debris, she created false trails, hoping to confuse any alien scouts that might move in their direction. Every diversion had to be timed perfectly. A sudden movement or loud sound could give them away, and if that happened, they would all die. She observed the alien commander directing troops, its glowing eyes scanning methodically. It was intelligent, aware, and dangerous, but she realized something crucial. It moved with routine, predictable patterns. Humans could exploit that. She whispered to the small group of survivors, instructing them to spread out and set small noise traps and flash devices she had scavenged from abandoned tech. The aliens hesitated when confronted with the first flash. They scanned the terrain with visible confusion. Ilara's heart raced as she watched them. Humans had learned survival through cunning and cooperation, and this was their chance to show it. She had studied alien movements carefully and realized that the dropships relied heavily on visual sensors and synchronized communication. If she could disrupt that, even temporarily, they could slow the fleet's advance enough to escape or strike strategically. She instructed the survivors to trigger a chain of small explosions and bright flashes at different points in the canyon, creating chaos among the alien troops. The plan worked. Aliens scattered, some running into traps, others hesitating mid-step. The Death World fleet's disciplined precision faltered, just for a moment, but that moment was enough for the humans to regroup. Ilara led them through narrow passages, her knowledge of the terrain guiding them. They climbed higher, using jagged rocks for cover, sliding silently past alien patrols that searched fruitlessly below. The young engineer beside her moved cautiously, but he was learning quickly, adapting to her guidance. Ilara felt a surge of pride. Humans were not just surviving, they were resisting. From their vantage point, they could observe the alien fleet spreading further across the canyon. Massive dropships hovered above, releasing waves of soldiers, while the canyon below became a chaotic mix of alien movements and makeshift human defenses. Ilara realized that if they could hold this plateau long enough, they might draw the fleet's attention away from the vulnerable settlements, giving civilians a chance to escape. She gathered the survivors in a small, hidden alcove and outlined their strategy. They would use traps, distractions, and hit-and-run tactics to survive and resist. The canyon's natural terrain was an ally. Narrow passages, steep cliffs, and rocky outcrops could funnel the alien soldiers, forcing them to slow down and allowing humans to strike strategically. She handed makeshift weapons to the survivors, pipes, metal shards, and scavenged energy devices, and demonstrated how to use the terrain to their advantage. Their eyes widened with understanding and determination. Humans were clever, resourceful, and adaptable, and even in the face of the unstoppable Death World fleet, they would fight. As they prepared, Ilara noticed the alien commander observing from a ridge, glowing eyes scanning systematically. It was learning from the chaos, adapting to human tricks, but it had not predicted their resilience, their ingenuity, or their unity. That was humanity's greatest strength. Ilara directed the survivors to set additional traps along the canyon edge. They triggered small explosions that sent rocks tumbling down, blocking alien paths and causing confusion. The aliens hesitated, glancing at one another, unsure of the source of the disruptions. Every trap, every delay, every distraction bought precious seconds for human survival. She felt her pulse quicken with hope. This was resistance. This was humans proving that even against overwhelming power, brains, courage, and teamwork could create opportunity. She moved swiftly, coordinating the survivors, pointing out where to hide, where to trigger devices, where to create diversions. The canyon below became a theater of confusion, the disciplined alien troops caught in a maze of human cunning. Ilara realized that their fight was not just survival, it was a statement. Humans would not be crushed without resistance. They would make the enemy pay for every inch, every second, every life threatened. As the alien commander advanced, carefully scanning for survivors, Ilara triggered a series of traps that caused it to pause, disrupting its coordination with other soldiers. The momentary pause allowed the humans to reposition and gain higher ground. The engineer beside her whispered, "I didn't think humans could," but she shook her head with a small smile. "We survive. That's what humans do." The canyon below continued to rumble with alien movement, dropships hovering ominously above, and smoke rising from destroyed equipment. Yet from the cliffs, the humans watched, alive, moving with purpose, and ready to resist. They were battered but not broken. Ilara's heart swelled with determination. They would hold this plateau, disrupt the fleet, and protect the lives they could. Humans were not just prey. They were survivors, fighters, and above all, clever and unyielding. And as the alien commander hissed in frustration, Ilara knew this was only the beginning of the resistance. The Death World fleet might seem unstoppable, but humans were never predictable, never weak in spirit, and always capable of turning the tide. She glanced at the survivors, nodded, and whispered, "We resist. Humans survive. Let them come." The canyon echoed with the distant hum of alien engines and the faint sounds of explosions, but from the cliffs above, the humans prepared to fight, ready to show that even against overwhelming odds, they could endure, adapt, and win. Ilara crouched behind a jagged rock on the cliff, her eyes fixed on the chaotic canyon below, where the Death World fleet had begun to regroup after the disruptions caused by the human resistance. Smoke and dust filled the air, and the hum of alien engines vibrated through the ground. The small group of survivors huddled near her, tense but alert, their makeshift weapons clutched tightly. Ilara's mind raced. They could delay the aliens, confuse them, and survive temporarily, but the fleet was too large, too organized, and too powerful to hold off forever. They needed more than clever traps and quick thinking. They needed a real advantage, something that could turn the tide. Her eyes scanned the battlefield carefully, noticing the patterns of the alien movements, their formations, and the way their dropships coordinated with ground troops. Then she saw it, a massive alien vessel hovering slightly above the rest, emitting a faint, pulsating light. It was different from the others, almost as if it controlled the entire fleet. Her heart pounded as she realized the truth. This ship was the central command of the Death World fleet, their intelligence hub, and if it could be disabled, the rest of the aliens would lose coordination. She whispered to the engineer beside her, who had become braver in the last few hours. "That's the key. That ship is their brain. If we can reach it, we can change everything." The engineer's eyes widened, and he shook his head. "You're talking about going into the heart of their fleet. That's impossible." Ilara smiled faintly, her resolve hardening. Impossible is just a word. Humans survive by turning impossible into possible. She began to plan. They could not fight the fleet head-on, but perhaps they could infiltrate the alien command ship, use their ingenuity, and strike at the core. It was risky, almost suicidal, but humans had never been afraid to take risks when the stakes were survival itself. She studied the terrain, the positions of the alien dropships, and the patrol patterns of the ground soldiers. There were small gaps in their coverage, narrow passages, and blind spots that she could exploit. She pointed these out to the survivors, instructing them to set additional traps and diversions to draw attention away from the route they would take. Every move had to be calculated. As the group prepared, Ilara pulled out a small, portable hacking device she had salvaged from a wrecked supply ship. It was crude, but it could interface with alien technology if she could get close enough. She had tested it on small alien drones, and it had worked. If she could reach the Central Command ship, she could deploy it to disrupt the fleet's coordination, at least temporarily. The human survivors stared at her with a mix of fear and awe. She knew the odds were against them, but she also knew something important. Humans thrived in impossible situations. They adapted, they improvised, and they never gave up. She led the group down the cliff carefully, moving through narrow paths and rocky outcrops, avoiding the alien patrols. Each step was tense, every sound potentially deadly. When they reached a vantage point closer to the Central Command ship, she paused to observe. The vessel hovered silently above a plateau, larger and more formidable than anything she had imagined. Energy shields glimmered around it, and beams of light scanned the ground below. Yet, she noticed a pattern. The shield pulsed in a rhythm, a small delay between pulses that could be exploited. "That's it," she whispered. "That's our way in." She directed the engineer and the other survivors to set small decoys along the canyon below, creating the illusion of multiple human groups attacking different points. The aliens paused, scanning the chaos, distracted by false threats. Ilara knew this was the moment. She and the engineer would move closer to the Central Command ship, using a narrow ravine that the aliens overlooked. Every step had to be silent, precise, and swift. As they approached the ship, she felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it, the heart of the enemy, the key to survival. Using her knowledge of alien technology, she climbed a ridge and positioned the portable hacking device, extending a small interface probe toward the ship's hull. Sparks flew as it connected, and the device began to upload a program designed to confuse the ship's AI. The lights on the vessel flickered slightly, and she felt a small surge of hope. Below, the alien fleet hesitated, their soldiers pausing as the Central Command signals wavered. The human resistance had gained precious seconds, enough to reposition and prepare for the next phase. But she knew they were not safe yet. The ship's internal defense system detected her intrusion. Alarms blared faintly, and the pulsating shields began to adjust. Ilara's hands worked quickly, fingers flying over the controls of her device. Every second mattered. The engineer assisted her, holding the device steady while she managed the upload. Sweat dripped down her forehead, but she ignored it. Humans survived because they persevered, and she would not fail now. Finally, the device emitted a steady tone, indicating success. The Central Command ship systems were disrupted. Its coordination signals scrambled. Below, the alien troops hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Ilara allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. They had done it. They had struck at the heart of the fleet. It was not a complete victory, but it was a beginning. The human survivors regrouped, inspired by her daring and ingenuity. Ilara knew that this disruption would not last forever, but it would give them time, opportunity, and hope. Humanity was clever, resilient, and adaptable, and even against an unstoppable force like the Death World fleet, they could make a difference. She looked at the horizon, the massive alien vessels still hovering, but now a little less coordinated, a little less invincible. She whispered to the engineer, "This is just the start. Humans survive. Humans fight. And humans will never give up." As the canyon below erupted in confusion, Ilara began planning their next moves. The Central Command ship was weakened, but not destroyed, and the human resistance had a chance to strike again, to survive, and to prove that ingenuity, courage, and determination could overcome even the deadliest of enemies. The Death World fleet might have been unstoppable, but humans had something they could never predict: creativity, adaptability, and the relentless will to survive. Ilara crouched behind a jagged outcrop, her eyes fixed on the massive Death World Central Command ship hovering above the plateau. The air hummed with the low vibration of its engines, and the alien fleet below moved in disarray, slowed and confused by the disruption she and the engineer had caused with the hacked AI. Dust and debris swirled in the canyon as human survivors scrambled into better cover, their eyes wide with fear and determination. Ilara's mind raced. They had created a momentary advantage, but the real challenge lay ahead, infiltrating the alien ship itself. She glanced at the young engineer beside her, who nodded grimly, understanding the stakes. "We go in, we get the information, and we find a way to stop them," she whispered. "No mistakes. Every step would be life or death, every decision critical." The path to the ship was narrow, exposed, and dangerous. Dropships hovered overhead, scanning with alien precision, while patrol drones moved in unpredictable patterns. Ilara studied their movements carefully, noting a pattern in their flight paths. They always scanned in a sequence, leaving small blind spots she could exploit. Using this knowledge, she led the engineer across a ridge and into a hidden ravine, the shadows of jagged rocks hiding them from sensors. Their hearts pounded, every nerve alert to the slightest sound. As they advanced, she deployed small noise devices at calculated points, sending loud clanks and flashes in opposite directions to divert drones and patrols. The aliens paused, confused, giving them just enough time to move silently closer. Every movement was deliberate. A single misstep would mean instant detection. Ilara's hand shook slightly as she activated her drone to scout the interior of the alien command ship. Its feed showed a labyrinth of corridors, glowing panels, and alien guards moving methodically. The scale of the vessel was intimidating, its walls alive with energy and technology she barely understood. But humans were adaptable, she reminded herself. Humans survived by improvising, by thinking faster than the enemy, by turning fear into strategy. She led the engineer to an access hatch they had observed from outside, partially obscured by the ship's massive hull. It was narrow, almost small enough to pass unnoticed, and likely overlooked by the aliens in their confidence. She pried it open carefully, and they slipped inside, moving into dimly lit corridors. The alien technology hummed around them, the walls pulsing faintly with energy, and every sound seemed amplified in the quiet ship. Ilara pressed herself against a bulkhead as a patrol passed, their glowing eyes sweeping the corridor. She held her breath, counting slowly, waiting for them to move on. When the path was clear, she signaled the engineer to follow and continued deeper into the vessel. They reached a junction where the corridors split in multiple directions. Using her drone's live feed and observations of patrol patterns, she charted the shortest path to the AI core. The tension was unbearable. Every corner could hide an alien soldier. Every sound could give them away. The engineer's hands trembled, but Ilara squeezed his shoulder, whispering, "Focus." Humans survive by thinking, not by panicking. They moved like shadows, silent and precise, using every obstacle, every corner, and every blind spot to their advantage. The corridor narrowed, forcing them to crawl under a low passage. Sparks from exposed panels illuminated the path briefly, but they moved with timing, slipping past detection. As they approached the chamber housing the AI core, alarms suddenly blared faintly, red lights bathing the corridors. The ship had detected something, though they were still not identified. Adrenaline surged through Ilara's body. They had to act fast. She deployed a small hacking probe she carried, sending it ahead to jam sensors temporarily. The lights flickered, the alarms muted slightly, and they pressed on. The engineer helped, holding cables and stabilizing the device as Ilara moved forward. Finally, they reached the AI core chamber, a vast room filled with pulsating energy conduits, holographic displays, and a central sphere of glowing power. The AI core pulsed rhythmically, the heart of the alien fleet, and now the most dangerous point in the entire ship. Ilara swallowed hard and activated her device, connecting it to the core's interface. Sparks flew, energy arced, and the humming of the ship intensified as the AI detected an intrusion. Red warning lights flashed violently, and a low growl echoed through the chamber. Alien drones moved toward them, their glowing eyes fixed on the humans. Every second counted. Ilara worked frantically, entering codes and commands, exploiting every weakness she had observed in their systems. The engineer assisted, holding the device steady, hands trembling but steadying under her guidance. One drone reached the entrance, and she triggered a small EMP pulse, short-circuiting it and buying a few precious seconds. Another drone approached, and she improvised a diversion, using reflective panels and the chamber's energy beams to confuse its sensors. The AI core began to react, pulsing faster, almost as if aware of their interference. Sparks flew, alarms shrieked, and energy arcs leapt across the room. Ilara's heart raced, but she focused. Humans survived by being clever, unpredictable, and relentless, and she would not fail now. The device completed its upload, and the AI core systems began to glitch, sending false commands to the fleet outside. The drones froze, unsure of whom to obey. The central command was disrupted, though not fully destroyed. It was enough. Enough to give humans an advantage, enough to buy time, enough to survive. Ilara allowed herself a fleeting moment of satisfaction. They had done it. They had infiltrated the heart of the Death World fleet and struck at its brain. But the danger was far from over. The drones began to recover, the AI core pulsed more violently, and alarms blared again. They had to escape before they were trapped. She grabbed the engineer's hand, pulling him toward the access hatch. Using the same diversions and blind spots that had gotten them in, they slipped back into the corridors, adrenaline fueling every movement. The ship hummed with chaos around them, and outside, the fleet's movements were faltering. Humans had proven something vital. Even against an unstoppable force, ingenuity, courage, and quick thinking could make a difference. As they reached the hatch and slipped outside into the shadows of the plateau, Alara looked at the alien ships, the Central Command disrupted but still alive, and whispered, "Humans survive. Humans fight. Humans adapt." She knew that the real battle was just beginning, but for now, they had achieved the impossible, and that was enough to keep hope alive. Alara crouched behind a jagged rock on the cliff, staring at the chaos below as the Death World fleet began to falter. The AI core they had infiltrated was sending false commands, confusing the alien soldiers, disrupting their coordination, and slowing the dropships. Sparks of hope ignited in her chest, but she knew this was only the beginning. The AI was powerful, intelligent, and dangerous, and it would not give up its control easily. She pulled out the portable hacking device, ready to connect it again if necessary, while the engineer beside her checked the remaining survivors and secured their positions on the plateau. The aliens were beginning to realize something was wrong. Dropships hovered uncertainly, soldiers hesitated in the canyon below, and the massive Central Command ship pulsed violently, as if aware of the intrusion. Alara's pulse quickened. Humans survived by acting fast, being unpredictable, and exploiting any weakness, and now it was their turn to strike, while the enemy was vulnerable. She activated the drone once more, sending it close to the command ship to analyze weak points, corridors, and drone patrol patterns. The AI core was not fully destroyed yet. It was fighting back, trying to re-establish control over its fleet. She had to act quickly before the aliens regained order. Using the drone feed, she guided the engineer and the survivors to trigger a series of distractions, small explosions, flashes of light, and noises in multiple locations to confuse the alien forces further. The drones and soldiers below were disoriented, some attacking each other in error, others freezing mid-step, uncertain of who to follow. Alara took a deep breath, steadying herself. This was humans versus one of the deadliest intelligences in the galaxy. Every decision mattered. She attached the hacking device to a remote interface near the edge of the plateau, connecting wirelessly to the command ship. Sparks flew as the system resisted, but she forced the upload, entering rapid sequences of codes to destabilize the AI's control. The engineer monitored the system, keeping it stable and making small adjustments under Alara's guidance. The alien AI realized the intrusion and activated defensive measures. Energy beams fired from the Central Command ship, targeting the plateau where humans were hidden. Alara dove behind a boulder, pulling the engineer down with her. Rocks shattered around them, dust and sparks filling the air, but she quickly readjusted the hacking device. Humans survived by thinking faster than their enemies, and she would not let these aliens outthink her. She analyzed the AI's response pattern, noticing a rhythm in its attacks. Every time it sent a pulse to redirect drones, there was a slight delay before it recalculated. That delay was their opportunity. Alara instructed the engineer to exploit it, timing the device to send pulses that would overload the AI sensors. Sparks flew from nearby rocks as drones fired blindly, hitting each other, and small explosions caused by the human survivors added to the confusion. The AI struggled to maintain control, its pulsing core flickering erratically. Alara allowed herself a fleeting moment of satisfaction, but she knew the battle was far from over. The alien Central Command had not yet surrendered. The drones, though disoriented, began to adapt, recalibrating their systems in response to the false commands. The AI was learning. She needed to stay ahead, be smarter, faster, more unpredictable. She adjusted the device again, feeding in rapid sequences to exploit the AI's limited adaptability. Sparks arced from the device, illuminating her determined face. The drones froze mid-step, some colliding, others short-circuiting, while the Central Command ship pulsed violently as the AI core struggled to compensate. Alara felt a surge of hope. Humans had turned an impossible situation into an advantage, proving that even a seemingly unstoppable intelligence could be challenged. Yet, the AI was dangerous, adaptive, and relentless. It pulsed again, sending a wave of energy toward the plateau, and Alara ducked behind the rock, shielding the engineer beside her. The force shook the ground, knocking loose rocks around them. She grit her teeth and focused, knowing humans survived because they did not give up. Her device sent a final sequence, a calculated overload targeting the AI's decision-making subroutines. The core pulsed violently, and then slowly. The ships below began to hesitate, their soldiers confused, their dropships hovering uncertainly. The AI's hold over its fleet had weakened, giving humans a critical window of opportunity. Ilara glanced at the survivors, their eyes wide with awe and relief, and whispered, "We survive. Humans fight. Humans adapt." The canyon below was still dangerous, the alien fleet enormous, but now it was vulnerable, disorganized, and open to further attacks. She allowed herself a small smile. They had not destroyed the AI completely, but they had proven that human ingenuity, courage, and persistence could disrupt even the most powerful intelligence. This victory was temporary, but it was enough to show that humans could fight, resist, and survive against impossible odds. As drones attempted to regain control and soldiers hesitated, Ilara and the engineer prepared to move, taking advantage of the chaos to escape the plateau and regroup with the rest of the human survivors. Every step had to be careful, precise, and deliberate. Sparks and flashes lit the canyon below, illuminating confused alien soldiers, while Ilara's heart pounded with determination. They had challenged the AI and survived, proving that humans were clever, resourceful, and unstoppable when cornered. She knew this was only a battle in a larger war, but the message was clear. Humans could not be crushed, even by the deadliest force in the galaxy. As she led the engineer down the rocky path to regroup with the others, the AI core continued to flicker, struggling to maintain control, and Ilara whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning. Humans survive. Humans fight. Humans adapt." The canyon echoed with distant hums, sparks, and confusion, but from the cliffs above, humans had shown that intelligence, courage, and determination could challenge even an unstoppable enemy, and for now, that was enough to keep hope alive. Ilara crouched behind a jagged boulder on the cliff, her eyes scanning the canyon below, where chaos reigned among the Death World fleet. Sparks flew from disabled drones, alien soldiers hesitated mid-step, and the hum of the Central Command ship flickered as the AI core struggled to regain control. The disruption they had caused in the AI systems had given humanity a small but critical advantage, and now it was time to move. The engineer beside her adjusted the portable hacking device one last time, making sure it continued to send false signals into the enemy fleet. "This is it," she whispered, her voice tight but steady. "We move now quietly, and get out before they adapt." The survivors, spread across the plateau, nodded grimly, gripping makeshift weapons, scavenged devices, and energy tools. Every step would be a test of patience, cunning, and courage. She studied the canyon carefully, noting patrol patterns and drone scanning intervals, calculating the safest path to the extraction point she had identified earlier. It was a narrow ravine leading to a hidden cliffside, distant enough from the alien fleet to provide temporary cover, yet close enough for a potential human pickup. She motioned for the engineer and the rest of the survivors to follow, moving like shadows along the jagged rocks. The drones below moved in semi-random patterns, still disoriented by the AI's disruption, giving them just enough time to advance without detection. The canyon echoed with distant hisses and alien chatter, but Ilara focused on the immediate task, escape. Every movement had to be silent, deliberate, and timed perfectly. She activated small diversion devices along the path behind them, creating clattering noises and flickering lights to draw attention away from the humans. The alien soldiers paused, confused, some investigating the disturbances, while others hesitated, unsure of the source. Ilara's pulse quickened, not with fear, but with adrenaline. Humans had survived impossible odds before, and now they were doing it again. As they advanced, a massive alien drone swooped near their path, its glowing eyes scanning sharply. Ilara pressed herself and the engineer against the cliffside, holding their breath, as the drone passed just feet away. Every second stretched into eternity. The canyon below was a battlefield of confusion, and she realized that the human resistance had to exploit every opportunity. A false diversion near a cliff edge sent a patrol of alien soldiers scrambling, buying precious moments. Ilara whispered instructions to the survivors, guiding them to move quickly yet cautiously, always using the rocks and shadows as cover. They navigated narrow ledges, climbed jagged slopes, and slid under rocky overhangs, every motion calculated to minimize detection. Sparks from occasional electrical panels in the canyon provided momentary darkness, perfect for moving unseen. Ilara's heart pounded, but she kept her mind focused. Humans survived because they adapted, and every decision, every risk taken now was a testament to that adaptability. As they neared the hidden cliffside extraction point, the engineer pointed ahead, signaling that a patrol drone had detected movement. Ilara froze, thinking quickly. She grabbed a small reflective panel from her pack and angled it toward the drone sensors, causing the light to scatter and confuse its tracking. The drone hesitated, its movement erratic, and they used the moment to slip past unnoticed. The survivors followed silently, their eyes wide with tension but filled with trust in her guidance. Finally, they reached the edge of the hidden cliffside. Below, a small canyon river twisted through the rocks, a natural barrier that made pursuit difficult. The extraction point was clear, a narrow ledge leading to a concealed ridge where they could hide temporarily. Ilara took a deep breath, signaling the survivors to move carefully. Every step was precarious, but they advanced with precision. From above, the Central Command ship pulsed erratically, and alien drones scanned the terrain, yet they had not noticed the humans slipping away. Ilara felt a surge of relief, but remained cautious. Survival demanded vigilance until they were truly safe. They reached the ridge and paused, scanning the horizon for signs of the alien fleet. Dropships hovered still, soldiers below moved cautiously, but the canyon and cliffs provided temporary cover. Ilara activated the portable signal device again, sending a faint beacon into space, hoping for a human pickup or reinforcements. Her heart raced at the thought of help arriving, yet she knew time was limited. The alien AI would adapt eventually, regaining control if given the chance. They had to leave, and they had to leave now. She motioned for the survivors to follow a narrow, hidden path leading away from the plateau and into a more forested area beyond the canyon. It was slower, more treacherous, but offered concealment and a chance to regroup. They moved cautiously, using rocks and shadows to hide from drones and patrols. At one point, a dropship fired a scanning beam dangerously close, but Ilara calculated their movement precisely, slipping under the shadow of an overhang. They pressed forward, hearts pounding, muscles straining, but moving with determination and precision. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached a safer zone, a small grove of trees and jagged rocks, where the terrain concealed them from the alien fleet. The Central Command ship remained above, its systems flickering from the earlier disruption, but for now, humans had survived the canyon, outsmarted the fleet, and reached temporary safety. Ilara turned to the survivors, their faces reflecting fear, exhaustion, but also hope. She smiled faintly, whispering, "We survived. Humans fight. Humans adapt." The engineer nodded, wiping sweat from his brow, and the others quietly prepared to rest, knowing that they had escaped the immediate danger, but that the battle was far from over. Below, the Death World fleet continued its chaotic search, its soldiers disoriented and confused, but Ilara knew it would recover eventually. For now, they had won the first part of the fight. Humans had survived the impossible once again, and this survival was a testament to ingenuity, courage, and relentless will. She gazed at the horizon, where the stars began to appear faintly, and whispered, "This is not the end. It is only the beginning. Humans survive, humans fight, and humans never give up." The canyon echoed faintly with distant hums and metallic clashes, but above the hidden grove, humans were alive, ready to continue resisting, and prepared for whatever the unstoppable Death World fleet would throw at them next. Ilara crouched among the jagged rocks of the hidden grove, her eyes scanning the horizon, where the Death World fleet still hovered ominously above the canyon. The humans had survived the AI disruption, escaped the immediate chaos, and regrouped, but now it was time to strike back. The survivors huddled behind boulders, adjusted scavenged weapons, energy devices, and traps, their faces a mix of exhaustion, fear, and newfound determination. Ilara stood, her heart pounding with anticipation. Humanity had been cornered, hunted, and underestimated, but they were far from defeated. She had a plan, and it relied on speed, cunning, and exploiting the aliens' momentary confusion after the AI disruption. She called the survivors together, whispering instructions that were clear and precise. They would split into small groups, move along hidden paths, set traps and distractions, and attack critical supply points of the Death World fleet. Every step, every diversion, every explosion was designed to confuse the aliens further, disrupt their coordination, and buy time for reinforcements to arrive. The engineer beside her checked the portable hacking device, now linked remotely to the Central Command ship, continuing to send pulses that destabilized the AI systems. Even partial disruption was enough. Humans thrived on ingenuity, adaptability, and taking advantage of small openings. Ilara led the first group along a narrow ridge, carefully avoiding drone patrols and using shadows to conceal their movements. Below, the canyon was still chaotic, alien soldiers uncertain where to focus, dropships hovering with reduced coordination, and sparks of malfunctioning technology flashing intermittently. Ilara activated small energy flares, sending beams of light across the canyon to draw attention while she led the group toward a critical supply drop, where the aliens stored energy cells and weapons. They moved silently, climbing rocks and crawling under overhangs, the engineer coordinating signals and distractions remotely. As they reached the supply point, Ilara triggered a small explosion that sent rocks tumbling down the cliffside. The aliens below scrambled, distracted by the sudden commotion, and the humans quickly secured the energy cells. These would be essential for future attacks and their own survival. Elsewhere, small groups of survivors followed the same plan, setting traps, triggering diversions, and sabotaging alien drones. The canyon below became a maze of confusion, with alien soldiers attacking shadows, drones colliding, and dropships hesitating as the AI struggled to regain control. Ilara felt a surge of hope. Humans had been pushed to the brink, yet here they were, turning the impossible into reality through cleverness, courage, and teamwork. From the hidden ridge, she observed the Central Command ship flickering, its AI core unstable and partially offline. The disruption continued, amplifying the chaos below, and every malfunctioning drop of alien technology increased their advantage. She whispered to the engineer, "This is our moment. We hit hard, we hit smart, and we don't stop." Using the captured energy cells, they set up makeshift charges to disable additional drones and ground soldiers. Explosions rocked the canyon strategically, each time to maximize disruption and confusion. Alien soldiers panicked, their formation breaking, while dropships hovered uncertainly, some retreating slightly as communication with the Central Command ship faltered. Ilara led a final push toward another strategic point, a bridge connecting two cliffs where alien troops were attempting to regroup. They moved swiftly, carefully, using every shadow, rock, and narrow path to avoid detection. As they reached the bridge, they set additional charges and created a controlled collapse, cutting off the alien reinforcements from reaching the canyon floor. The chaos intensified, giving humans more room to maneuver and more time to regroup. The engineer monitored the hacking device, ensuring the AI core remained destabilized. The Central Command ship pulsed violently, its lights flickering, energy beams misfiring, and drones confused. Ilara allowed herself a brief moment to breathe, knowing humans had shifted the battle in their favor. Yet she remained alert. The Death World fleet was powerful, relentless, and would recover if given time. This was only the beginning of humanity's counterattack. She signaled the survivors to regroup at a safe plateau, where they could consolidate resources, care for the injured, and plan the next moves. From this vantage point, they could observe the alien fleet, track its response, and strike again if necessary. Below, the canyon echoed with chaos, explosions, confusion, and alien movements in disarray. But above the ridge, humans were alive, organized, and ready to continue fighting. Ilara felt a surge of pride and determination. They had survived impossible odds, outsmarted a superior enemy, and now were striking back with intelligence, coordination, and courage. The engineer beside her smiled faintly, handing her a repair device and whispering, "We're actually doing it. We're surviving and fighting back." Ilara nodded, her eyes scanning the horizon where alien dropships hovered uncertainly, the Central Command ship flickering like a wounded predator. She raised her hand to signal the survivors, whispering, "Humans fight. Humans survive. Humans adapt. We take the fight to them." The small groups spread out across the plateau and cliffs, preparing for further attacks, using shadows, terrain, and traps to their advantage. The canyon below was no longer only a place of fear. It had become a battlefield where humans turned intelligence into power, strategy into survival, and courage into action. Ilara looked at the horizon, where the stars faintly shimmered, and whispered to herself, "This is just the start. They may be unstoppable, but we are human, and humans never give up." The Death World fleet remained enormous, their power undeniable, yet humanity had proven something vital. Brains, courage, and unity could disrupt even the most formidable enemy. Explosions, flashing lights, and chaos rippled across the canyon below as Ilara led the survivors forward. Each step a declaration that humans would fight back, that they would survive, and that no force in the galaxy could crush the ingenuity, determination, and spirit of humanity. She knew the battle was far from over, but for now, humanity had struck first, survived the impossible, and proven that even against the deadliest foe, humans were unstoppable, resilient, and endlessly clever.